Hey everybody, welcome to Lex's World and our episode on cannabis and PTSD. So in the world of medical cannabis, there is a ton of hyperbole and exaggeration. Now, when you actually run out the math, a clean majority of cannabis users consume for recreational use, not medical, but to those who do consume cannabis for medical purposes, the details are really important in how effective it is for their medical condition. But due to the history of prohibition and slow re-legalization through the medical system, and the history of cannabis in general when it comes to early man, if today you Google any medical condition, pretty much whichever one you want, and then combine it with the word cannabis, you're going to find some article somewhere which claims that cannabis or one of the individual cannabinoids from it are not only a great medication, but the best medication for that random condition that you just typed in. Now, of course, this is false. Cannabis can do a lot, but it can't do everything, and for some conditions that it does work for, there are often medications that are better. So I've decided in a handful of episodes spread out over a long period to cover a few specific but relatively common medical conditions where cannabis is truly an exceptional medication for them, meaning that it's highly effective and it's relatively side effect free versus its pharmaceutical counterparts, and it actually goes a long way to fixing the condition rather than just covering up the symptoms for a couple of hours. That last one is tricky because when it comes to the overwhelming bulk of conditions, cannabis is a treater of the symptoms, not a treater of root causes. So based on all that, I thought that post-traumatic stress disorder was a great place to start. PTSD is a disease where a particular trauma, usually a violent or a disturbing or a life-threatening event, leads to symptoms in one of three categories. You relive the trauma either when you're highly anxious or in your nightmares. You begin avoiding things that are associated with the trauma since they cause tough-to-control anxiety. And finally, you get insomnia, causing a person to be more susceptible to mood swings, poor focus, and a reduced quality of life overall. Now, the interesting thing about PTSD is it's not a 1 in 1,000 people kind of disease. Now, I've seen estimates that I consider to be on the high end, but I think it's fair to say that 5 to 8 people out of every 100 will experience PTSD at some point in their lives. For some, it's a lifelong problem, and for some, it's pretty temporary. So to control the symptoms I just listed, what you need is a medication that consistently delivers, number 1, fewer bad dreams, number 2, less insomnia, and number 3, a quick alleviation of even high levels of anxiety. And it has to do so really fast, meaning like in under 60 seconds. Obviously, cannabis is very uniquely positioned for all of these, especially quick and effective if you consume it in a quick reacting way, such as tinctures. Consumption via inhalation is second best. I'll also point out that if getting rid of nightmares is your primary concern, consume it within 90 minutes of bedtime on a consistent basis for best results. In the case of PTSD, common pharmaceutical medications like Prozac or Zoloft, those come with negative unwanted side effects that exceed the unwanted side effects of cannabis, at least for most people. It wouldn't surprise the many growers who watch my show to know that the general types of cannabis associated with being the best for PTSD are mostly pure indica or indica-dominant hybrids. I will link in the description to strains that Leafly considers to be the best for PTSD, updated to the current date, and it ranks those strains by impressive numbers of user reviews, which I think is not a bad way to do it for something that we don't have overly reliable sources of data on. And while you're in the video description, check out today's sponsor, TNB Naturals, who are the makers of the Enricher for cannabis and for other plants. But the nice thing about using cannabis for PTSD is that every time you succeed in avoiding anxiety or a nightmare by using it, you actually reduce your odds of having it happen again, or as intensely next time, since this condition is psychologically driven. This varies person to person and trauma to trauma, of course, but what I'm getting at is that what makes cannabis truly exceptional is that with this medical condition, it can do more than just treat the symptoms. It can actually do something to cure the condition over time. Add everything up and there's no question why cannabis is so heavily prescribed in Canada to military vets being treated for PTSD. That was obviously the case before last month's recreational legalization. We've had medical in Canada since about 2001. And on that note, I hope that you share this video to spread the knowledge, subscribe if you're new here and hit that like button, and we'll see you next time here on Lex's World.